regarding Anonymous and the Church of Scientology. Can you tell me what you know about the Church of Scientology and how it affects you?
Well, firstly, before I say anything about the Church of Scientology, it's a very complex subject. There are so many different angles regarding this so-called church. I think maybe the best thing I could do is explain why somebody like myself, who's never had any involvement in something like Scientology, got involved in a protest group, who I proudly associate with as known as Anonymous. Last year, late January last year, an article appeared in the Times newspaper. And it was at a time when something was leaked onto the internet with Tom Cruise, who was ranting and raving about Scientology and how what a wonderful religion and everything else that went with that. Now, the more I read this article, this was from an impartial journalist, by the way, the more, even because he was impartial, I realised that in between the lines there was something quite sinister going on here. So I decided to look up a little bit more about it. The first port of call I made was at my local library. I thought, if anyone's going to be able to tell me anything, it'll be my library. How wrong I was. On approaching the librarian, and I very discreetly asked if they had any books on Scientology, and she looked into a computer and said, no, there's absolutely nothing at all. At that time, an old lady actually approached me, which really surprised me, and said, excuse me, I really wouldn't get involved in Scientology. And I explained to her that I wasn't getting involved, I was simply trying to find out more about it. This coming from an old lady, and with all due respect to her, she must have been in her 70s, I thought was quite a prolific statement, really. So I carried on anyway, but still with this sort of heavy heart thinking, what am I getting involved in here? I did find out more. I found out more about the founder, and what a complete hypocrite and complete liar he turned out to be.
Who was that?
Hubbard, L.R. Hubbard. The more you read about him, the more unbelievable it gets, really. And then I got some background, and then it came up that there was a protest going on, a worldwide protest for the first time ever, that had been organised on the internet by Anonymous. The date for that was the 13th of February last year. I was actually working on that date, so I arrived late. I got there about 2:30, so the protest was like in its last hour. I was amazed at the number of people that were there. I wasn't masked because I was quite naive, just walking around asking people why they were there. They were asking me in turn, people were taking my photograph, etc. And I went away with a feeling thinking, this is getting serious. So I found out even more about Scientology and what they've been up to. Now, to list their crimes, you could go on forever. We're talking about murder, we're talking about extortion, we're talking about kidnapping, barefaced lying to people, misleading their members, promising them this sort of euphoric existence that just simply doesn't exist. But unfortunately, it all comes at a price. Now, one of the more sinister aspects of Scientology is the way that they hook you in with it. They'll probably give you a free DVD and an e-meter course, and let you know that you're not a perfect person, you're a good person, but there are faults with you, and Scientology can cure them. And you'll go on one of their courses. This is going to cost you probably in the region of a few £100s. As the OT courses go up into the levels, the more expensive they get, I believe. That in itself must make anybody question what is going on here. As it calls itself a church, it calls itself a religion. I've never known a religion charge so much money for its texts. Now that I got more into sort of finding out about this structure that they have, and to somebody who's got a pair of open eyes, it's blatantly obvious that this is a scam. Now, I do believe there are Scientologists out there that truly believe that what they're doing has got justification and is a sound foundation for leading a normal life. There's nothing leading a normal life regarding Scientology. It just simply isn't the case. There's one aspect that on all the process I've been, and there's not many that I've missed, and if I had, it's been through work commitments. During the last summer, the numbers were phenomenal. There was a police presence there, very anti-anonymous, I hasten to add, very much in the Scientologist pockets, I felt. And at one of the protests last year, I got my first really sinister taste of what a protest can be like, when one of the Scientologists came up to me and spat at me. I reported this to a police officer, and he really wasn't interested, because in my opinion that was a form of assault. He suggested, this Scientologist, that we walk away from this crowd, and he was going to beat me up. So, you know, I've had that to deal with, and since then I've been slightly more cautious. When I go down there, you know, I have to consider it to be patient. I have to be a patient person with them. I realise that they're brainwashed, and they're living on a different level to what a normal person is, I feel. This is why I get so angry about Scientology, because they make you believe that you're involved in something that's very exclusive, and it isn't. There's nothing exclusive about Scientology. It's simply something that's been thought up by this chap called Hubbard, and it was set in the 50s in a different era where people thought, yes, maybe this is the religion of the future, and for some unbeknown reason to me, this thing has caught on. And it boils down to me it's a lesson in human nature, Scientology. To me, it just proves how gullible people can be. And if there are any Scientologists out there listening to this, all I could ask you to do is just sit back and truly look at what you're being taught. And you honestly believe the things that are being said to you. Some of the claims that Hubbard has come out with, that he can cure radioactive sickness, he can cure the common cold. You can get onto an OT level 8, 9, I think it is now, where you become in a state of clear. Hubbard is basically suggesting that once you're a clear, you're basically a superhuman person. I've not heard of any Scientologists that have won a Nobel Prize, have won a gold medal at the Olympics, in fact, have excelled in any field whatsoever. I mean, Hubbard himself was failed his degree. He was allegedly a nuclear physicist. He never took his exams, although he claimed he did. He claimed to be a war hero. He never was. He was discharged with a duodenal ulcer. That's the truth, Scientologists. He was never a war hero. It's a society based on lies and deceit. And the only people that actually benefit in Scientology are the people that are high up in it. The David Miscaviges, the Tom Cruises, all those type of people. And Miscavige has been a very clever man in some respects. He's recruited celebrities like Travolta, Cruise another one, Nancy Cartwright, the voice of Bart Simpson. They're all rich people. They're all on very high OT levels. Now, does that just strike me as being a massive coincidence? The more money you have, the better you're going to get on in Scientology. If you're a poor person, you're not going to do very well with it. It's based on money. And to all you people out there that are involved in this, please look at your conscience. Find out more what Hubbard was about. But another point I'd like to add is when I first got involved in this, I mean, let me hasten to add that I do live a very sort of quiet existence. I live in the country. I don't go to Manchester much, or never used to. I go once a month now. And why would somebody like that in my position want to get involved in something that's as sinister as this? After reading what I've read about all that they've done and all the non-Scientology written stuff about them and the criticism, there's been so many cases now where it simply has to be true. There's nobody out there just lying. What they're doing is absolutely dreadful. I believe in my heart that I'm against this. I don't want them in my hometown. Manchester is where I come from. I'm a Mancunian born and bred. I don't want this cult in my city. I want them out. I only found out a few weeks ago, actually. They've actually been there about 35 years. But I sincerely think that there weren't people really monitoring Scientology at that stage. People are getting more clever now. We're getting more knowledgeable. We don't want this. I mean, even before my first protest, I made a preliminary journey down to this Church of Scientology in Deansgate, just to have a look, because I was curious to see what a little bit more. I was learning about it. I was looking in the window at the Dianetics book and all the rest of the nonsense that they advertise, and a chap introduced himself to me, and he was one of the Scientologists, and he kept asking me constantly, would you like to come into the church and have a look? I call them shops, because shops are selling you something, and that's exactly what Scientology is doing. So, reluctantly, I went into the shop of Scientology, and we went back to the back of the room, and he was showing me all this different divisions of his work, and you press a button, and it's all computer animated and all this sort of thing. Very sophisticated. So, I can only assume there's a lot of money on the table with this. It's been going on a long time. So they are. Don't underestimate Scientology. They're a very powerful organisation. They've got a lot of money. But the only ones, as I said before, the only ones that truly benefit are the people up at top. the ones that are controlling